All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're tackling one of the biggest questions out there. Where exactly is paradise? We're going to dig deep into the scriptures and see if that image we all have in our heads actually matches what the texts have to say. So, just take a second. When I say the word paradise, what's the first image that pops into your head? What does it look like? And maybe most importantly, where is it? For most of us, it's probably something like this, right? The classic image of a heavenly kingdom way up in the clouds, totally separate from our physical world, somewhere up there. But what if that popular picture isn't the main one the scriptures are painting? What if the very texts we're about to look at argue that our ultimate destiny isn't escaping Earth at all, but seeing Earth itself perfected? Let's see what the evidence says. So, our investigation kicks off with the Quran, where the source material highlights a description of paradise that is just so constantly and vividly, well, earthly. The power of this idea really starts with a single word. See, the main term the Quran uses for paradise is Jannah, and its literal translation isn't heaven, it's simply a garden. Right there. That word itself is our first huge clue. And the text gets way more explicit. Check out this verse. It has the righteous actually declaring that God has made them inherit the earth. And then, in the same breath, they connect that to settling in paradise. It's not a subtle hint. It's a direct connection. So let's just be crystal clear on what that means. According to this text, the promised inheritance, the actual location of paradise, is the earth itself. And this isn't just some one-off idea. It's a theme that runs through the text. This other verse reinforces it, saying that the land of paradise will be inherited by the righteous. Again and again, the focus is on a physical, tangible land. All throughout the Quran, the imagery used for Jannah is so grounded. It's described as a place of lodging, not some abstract state of being. It has rivers, fruits, and the joy of being with your family again. It all paints a picture of a perfected physical world, not some faraway, ethereal one. Okay, that's a really compelling case from the Quran for an earthly paradise. But does the Bible present a similar vision? Let's pivot and take a look. The source material points to some incredibly direct statements that really challenge the common view. Take this one from the book of Acts, where the Apostle Peter says, flat out, "For David did not ascend to heaven." King David, this huge, righteous figure, is explicitly said to not be in heaven. This same idea gets reinforced with this really fascinating bit of logic about John the Baptist. So, as you see here, Jesus calls him the greatest man ever born. But then, he says that even the least person in the kingdom of heaven is greater than John. According to the source material, the implication is pretty clear. The greatest man on earth, John the Baptist, is not yet in heaven. He's waiting for an earthly reward. And all of this seems to build up to what the source presents as a general rule, coming from Jesus himself in the book of John. He says that no one has gone into heaven except for him. This really suggests that going to heaven just isn't the default path for humanity. So, if that's the rule, is there an exception? Well, according to the source, the Bible does outline one very specific group that is granted a heavenly destiny. And that number is 144,000. As it's described in the book of Revelation, this is a limited group, chosen for a very specific job, to rule in heaven with Jesus over the earth. They are the exception that proves the rule. So, on one hand, we have the Quran describing a paradise garden on earth. On the other, we have the Bible pointing to an earthly kingdom for pretty much all of mankind. So what happens when we bring these two visions together? This is where the harmony just becomes undeniable. Look at this parallel. On the left, the Quran says, the righteous will inherit the land. And on the right, from the Psalms written centuries earlier, the righteous will inherit the land. The core promise is identical. This leads us to the unified model that the source presents. First, the vast majority of the faithful are promised an inheritance on a restored paradise earth. Second, you have the exception, that small group, who receive a heavenly reward to rule. And third, this entire structure perfectly fulfills that famous prayer, "Your kingdom come, on earth as it is in heaven." So when you put all this evidence from the source material together, it leads to a really powerful shift in how we see things. The ultimate hope that's being presented isn't about an escape from our world. It's the complete restoration of our world. It's not about abandoning our home. It's about waiting for our home to be made new, to be transformed into the garden it was always meant to be. And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. If paradise isn't some distant escape plan, but is actually the future of this very planet, our home, does that change how we should view it and care for it and live on it right now?